In the frozen wilderness of Montana, a dog has been chained for 7 years, trapped in pain and isolation. Her fierce, wounded eyes tell a story of survival, as she paces endlessly in the shadows. Most people who try to approach her are met with snarls and attacks. But one man, Tom Parker, dares to step closer. What made him risk everything? Why did this dog, feared by many, respond to him in a way no one expected? Stay with us as we uncover a story of resilience, heartbreak, and an unexpected bond. Tom Parker stood at the edge of his sanctuary, staring out at the cold, barren landscape of Montana. The winter wind bit at his skin, and the snow-covered trees seemed as still as his heart. He couldn't shake the memories of the past, the failed rescue of a wolf pup that had been abandoned in the wild, left to suffer. Tom had tried to save it, but he was too late. That failure had haunted him for months. The pup's eyes, full of pain and fear, still lived in his dreams. But nothing hurt more than losing his daughter, Amy. Amy had loved animals just like Tom. She had dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, of helping the creatures she loved so much. But when she was just 16, Amy was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. The cancer took over her body so quickly that it seemed like there was no time to fight back. Despite the treatments, the pain, and the constant hospital visits, Amy passed away, leaving a hole in Tom's life that no amount of work or rescue missions could fill. 2 years had passed since Amy's death, but the grief still weighed heavily on him. Tom had buried his daughter, watched his marriage crumble, and faced a darkness inside him that he didn't know how to escape. The wildlife sanctuary he had built with Amy's dream in mind now felt empty. There was no joy in the work anymore, no hope. That was until the phone rang. It was 3 a.m., the line crackling with a shaky voice on the other end. "There's a dog, chained behind an abandoned property near Livingston," the voice said. "You're the only one who can help." The caller was anonymous, and Tom had heard calls like this before. Many times, these tips led nowhere, empty promises and false hope. He could easily ignore it and go back to his life of quiet pain. After all, the sanctuary was already full, and he had enough work on his plate. The last thing he needed was to face another broken animal, another failure. But something in the caller's voice struck a chord with Tom. Maybe it was the desperation, or maybe it was just that tiny part of him still hoping to make a difference. Despite the years of loss and pain, he couldn't walk away. "I'll go," Tom said quietly, as if the decision had already been made before he even spoke the words. He hung up the phone and stood in silence for a moment, unsure of what to expect. Tom drove out to the abandoned property, the cold air stinging his face as he pulled up to the rusted gate. He could see the outline of the dog in the distance, large, covered in dirt, pacing in endless circles. Her coat was matted, and the chain around her neck looked like it had been there for years. But it was her eyes that caught Tom's attention, eyes that looked as if they had seen too much suffering, too much pain. It was the same look he had seen in Amy's eyes as she fought her battle. Tom's heart tightened in his chest. He knew he couldn't ignore this. He couldn't turn away. He had failed to save so many things in his life, but this time, he would try. This time, he wouldn't give up. The pain of his past still lingered, but maybe, just maybe, he could help heal this broken creature. He had to try. Tom stepped out of his truck and walked toward the dog. The wind howled through the bare trees, and the snow crunched under his boots. As he got closer, he could see her more clearly. She was large, her body covered in dirt and matted fur. The once beautiful coat was now tangled and filthy, as though she hadn't been cared for in years. The chain around her neck had rubbed her skin raw, leaving an open, painful wound. Tom could hear her pacing back and forth, her movements slow but determined, as if she had been trapped in this same spot for far too long. The ground was worn down where she had walked, creating a path in the frozen earth. Her eyes locked with Tom's. They were a dull yellow, filled with fear and distrust. Every step she took seemed to carry a weight, not just from the chain but from years of abuse. Tom could see the scars on her body, the marks of neglect, and the deep suffering that had shaped her. She was not just a dog, she was a survivor, someone who had been through more pain than most could imagine. But in her eyes, Tom saw something more. It was the same look he had seen in his daughter Amy's eyes before she passed away. That look of pure suffering, the kind of pain that no one should ever have to endure. "Easy, girl," Tom whispered under his breath, his voice soft and steady. He could feel his heart ache as he approached her, his hand stretched out. He wasn't sure what to expect. The dog could attack him, could turn away, or could even run off, but he wasn't going to back down. He had seen too many animals like this, trapped in their own fear and pain, and he wasn't going to walk away. As he got closer, Sheriff Mike pulled up in his truck, stepping out quickly. "You sure you want to get any closer, Tom?" he asked, his voice low and filled with concern. "That dog has a history. She's attacked 3 people in the past year, including a man who nearly lost his arm." Tom nodded, his gaze still fixed on the dog. "I know," he said quietly. "But I can't leave her like this." Sheriff Mike sighed, his face full of worry. "Her name's Bella," he continued. "She was taken in by some idiot who ran an illegal animal breeding operation. When she started attacking people, they just left her here, chained up. She's been like this for 7 years, Tom. She's not just aggressive, she's learned to hate humans." Tom's heart sank as he listened. He could only imagine what this dog had gone through, chained up, abandoned, and abused. But there was something in her eyes that made him think she was not beyond saving. He had seen this kind of trauma before, both in animals and people, and he knew the pain was not the end of the story. As he stood there, Tom felt an emotional connection. He saw in Bella's eyes the same pain he had seen in Amy's final days, the quiet suffering, the hopelessness, the fear of being alone. His chest tightened, and he swallowed hard. It was as if Amy's spirit was standing beside him, urging him to help this dog, just as he had tried so hard to help her. Tom took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had to help Bella, just like he had tried to help Amy. He wasn't going to fail again. Tom took a deep breath as he slowly unhooked the rusted gate. The sound of the hinges creaked through the stillness of the frozen landscape, breaking the quiet. The dog, Bella, immediately stopped pacing. Her yellow eyes fixed on him, her body tense, and her lips curled back in a snarl. She took a step back, showing her sharp teeth, warning him to stay away. Tom didn't flinch. He had seen animals in far worse conditions before, animals full of fear and aggression, but he knew this wasn't just a wild animal, it was a creature that had been hurt, abandoned, and left to suffer. "Hey there, beautiful," Tom said softly, his voice calm and gentle. He didn't want to make any sudden movements. He knew that any wrong step could make the situation worse. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dog's growl deepened, but instead of charging, she took another step back, still watching him with distrust. Tom understood her fear. She wasn't angry, she was terrified. The years of abuse had taught her to fear humans, to expect pain from them, not kindness. Tom knew that earning her trust would take time, but he was willing to be patient. He didn't want to force her into anything. Instead, he sat down on the frozen ground, just outside her range, and began talking to her. He spoke about his life, about his sanctuary back in the Gallatin Valley, about the animals he had helped in the past. He told her stories, stories that meant nothing to her but everything to him. "I run a place where animals are safe," Tom said softly. "I take care of wolves, foxes, and all sorts of creatures that need a second chance." He paused, his voice filled with emotion. "My daughter, Amy, she loved animals more than anything. She wanted to be a vet, to help animals like you." Tom glanced at Bella. She hadn't moved, but he noticed something in her eyes, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps. He smiled sadly, remembering his daughter's laugh, her passion for helping every animal she came across. Amy loved animals. She always said they could feel things we couldn't, Tom continued. She believed animals understood us more than we realized. He sighed, the memory of his daughter still fresh in his mind. I miss her so much, Bella. But I think she'd want me to help you. I'm not going to give up on you. Tom spent hours like this, sitting just out of Bella's reach, speaking softly to her, sharing his life and his pain. He didn't expect her to change overnight, but he knew that every word, every moment, was helping build a connection. Slowly, after hours of quiet talk, Bella's growls softened. Her eyes, once filled with fear and suspicion, began to show something different. Caution. Curiosity. For the first time since Tom had arrived, Bella didn't retreat from him. She stayed where she was, watching him closely, listening to his voice. Tom knew this was just the beginning, but it was a start. The bond had begun, not with a touch or a rescue, but with trust, slow, careful, and earned over time. Tom was patient, and he knew this was the only way to heal the wounds of the past. As the days passed, Tom could see that Bella's condition was getting worse. Her breathing became shallow and labored, and her movements were slower, like every step was a struggle. The raw wound around her neck, caused by the heavy chain, was now infected, and there were signs of internal injuries from years of constant strain. She was weak and in pain, and Tom knew that if he didn't act soon, things could get even worse. Tom stood at the edge of the fence, watching Bella carefully. He knew he had to get her the help she needed, but he didn't want to risk making her panic. He had tried gaining her trust, but Bella was still fearful, and getting too close might cause her to lash out. The idea of using a tranquilizer dart had crossed his mind, but it was dangerous. The sedative could make her condition worse if not done right. But Tom had no choice. The fear of losing her, after everything she had gone through, outweighed the risk. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He reached into his jacket for the tranquilizer gun, his hand trembling. Bella stood a few feet away, watching him closely, her eyes filled with suspicion. Tom knew she wasn't going to understand what he was doing. To her, every human had betrayed her in the past. She had every reason to fear him. "I'm sorry, girl," Tom whispered, his voice filled with regret. "I'm doing this because I have to help you." As he aimed the dart, Bella's eyes locked onto his. She seemed to sense something was coming. The moment the dart hit her, her body tensed, and she let out a sharp yelp. The sedative quickly began to take effect, and Bella's legs buckled beneath her. She fell to the ground, her body going limp as the drug took hold. Tom's heart ached as he watched her fight the sedative. He had seen animals react to sedatives before, but this time, it felt different. This time, he felt as though he was betraying her, even though he knew he was doing the right thing. He knelt beside her as her breathing slowed, whispering apologies under his breath. "I'm so sorry, Bella. I know you're scared. I just want to help you." As Bella lay there, sedated but still alive, Tom couldn't help but think of Amy. He remembered the first time they had taken her to the hospital, the fear in her eyes as she struggled with the pain. Tom had promised her he would save her, but in the end, he couldn't. It was a promise he had failed to keep. Now, he was making another promise, this time to Bella. He wasn't going to fail her. Over the next few days, Bella's recovery was slow and difficult. She fought against the pain, and her body was weak from years of neglect. But Tom never left her side. He stayed with her in her enclosure, offering food and comfort when she would accept it. He would sit beside her, talking to her about everything and nothing, just like he had done when he first tried to gain her trust. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when Bella would refuse to eat or would lash out at anyone who got too close. But Tom didn't give up. Slowly, Bella began to respond. Her eyes softened, and her movements became less stiff. She started to eat again, and for the first time since Tom had met her, she didn't seem to be in so much pain. As Bella's recovery continued, Tom felt a connection growing between them. They were both facing their pain, both learning to trust again. It was a slow, difficult process, but they were healing together, and that made all the difference. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt a spark of hope. Bella was surviving, and so was he. Bella's recovery was a slow and difficult process. She had spent years trapped in fear, and it wasn't easy for her to adjust to her new life. At first, Bella still struggled to trust anyone, even Tom, who had been with her through everything. She often looked at him with a mix of confusion and caution. Her body had healed, but the emotional scars she carried from her past were much harder to overcome. But over time, Bella began to change. She started to relax a little more, especially when Tom sat with her. She no longer snarled when he came close. Instead, she watched him with a look of quiet curiosity, as if trying to figure out if he was really different from the people who had hurt her. Bella began accepting food from his hand and allowed him to pet her, though it took time for her to feel safe enough to fully trust him. As Bella's trust in Tom grew, he began to realize that she could help others. The idea came to him slowly, after watching her calm presence and her gentle demeanor. Bella had a unique ability to connect with people who were hurting, just like she had been. Tom thought about how animals often seem to understand human emotions better than anyone else. Bella could be a healer, not just for herself but for others too. Tom decided to introduce Bella to a group of veterans who had been struggling with PTSD. The veterans came from all walks of life, each carrying deep emotional scars from their time in the military. Some had lost friends, some had seen things that no one should ever witness, and others had simply never found a way to cope with the things they had experienced. At first, Bella was cautious around the veterans, staying near Tom but keeping her distance. But soon, something remarkable began to happen. One veteran named James, who had a hard time speaking about his past, sat down quietly beside Bella's enclosure. As he sat there, Bella walked over to him, her eyes gentle and understanding. She didn't rush toward him, instead, she slowly lowered herself beside him, resting her head on the ground as if sensing his pain. James didn't speak at first, but Bella's presence seemed to calm him. He sat in silence for a long time, his hand gently resting near her. As the minutes passed, James slowly began to open up. He spoke about the things he had seen in war, the friends he had lost, and the guilt that weighed heavily on him. Bella stayed with him, her calm presence offering him something words could not, a sense of peace. This was the breakthrough Tom had hoped for. Bella, the dog who had been broken and abandoned, had become a healer. She helped James, and she helped others like him. As more veterans came to the sanctuary, Bella's presence became a powerful tool in their recovery. She didn't judge them, and she didn't try to fix them. She simply offered the comfort of being there, understanding the pain that was too deep for words. Over time, Bella became a symbol of healing. Her ability to connect with the veterans and trauma victims showed that even the most wounded creatures could offer hope and comfort. Bella's journey from fear and suffering to becoming a source of healing inspired everyone she met. It proved that emotional scars, no matter how deep, could be healed with time, trust, and the kind of love that Bella had to give. As Bella's recovery continued, Tom realized that she could do more than just heal herself. She had a unique gift, something that went beyond her own pain. Bella had an ability to understand people's emotions in a way that few could. Her calm presence, gentle nature, and quiet empathy made her the perfect candidate for something that could truly make a difference. Tom decided to introduce Bella into a trauma therapy program. This program was designed to help veterans and other trauma victims who struggled with PTSD, depression, and emotional wounds. Many of the people who came to the sanctuary were hurting deeply, carrying the weight of their experiences in war, abuse, or loss. Tom had seen the power of animals to comfort people, but Bella was different. She wasn't just an animal, she was a survivor, just like the people who came to the program. Bella knew what it was like to be broken, to feel abandoned, and to struggle with pain. The first day Bella met the veterans, she was cautious but curious. She had never been around so many strangers, especially people with their own scars and wounds. However, it didn't take long for Bella to start interacting with them. She moved slowly, carefully, and in her own quiet way, she communicated something powerful. She wasn't just a dog, she was a living example of resilience. One veteran, named Michael, was sitting near the fence of Bella's enclosure. He had been to countless therapy sessions, but nothing ever seemed to help. The memories of war and the things he had seen still haunted him, and he found it hard to speak about them. As he sat there, Bella approached him. She didn't run up to him excitedly, like a typical dog might. She simply sat next to him, offering him a silent, comforting presence. Michael, at first, was unsure of what to do. But there was something about Bella's calm demeanor that made him feel safe. Over the next few weeks, Bella continued to meet with different veterans and trauma victims. Each time, she seemed to know exactly who needed her the most. For some, her presence was a source of peace. For others, it was a chance to talk about their pain without judgment. Bella never spoke, but her actions spoke louder than words ever could. The program quickly began to show results. Veterans who had struggled to sleep began to relax in Bella's presence. Those who had trouble expressing their emotions started to open up. Bella didn't try to fix anyone, she simply allowed them to be themselves. That was what made her so powerful. She didn't push them to talk or tell their stories. She just sat with them, letting them feel understood and accepted. Bella's role in the therapy program opened the door for a new form of healing. Tom and the staff began to see that animals, especially those who had experienced pain themselves, could offer a different kind of support. The bond that formed between Bella and the participants was something special, a quiet, unspoken connection that helped heal deep emotional wounds. Bella became not just a therapy animal, but a symbol of hope, showing everyone that even the most broken parts of us could find healing through time, trust, and unconditional love. Tragedy struck once again when James, one of Bella's most devoted therapy participants, took his own life. James had been struggling with severe PTSD, and his breakthrough moments with Bella had brought him some peace, but the weight of his past was too much for him to carry. His death hit everyone at the sanctuary hard, especially Tom. Tom had always known that helping trauma victims was a difficult journey, but he never expected to lose someone like James. The veterans and trauma victims who came to the sanctuary were vulnerable, carrying deep emotional wounds. They trusted Bella to help them heal, and for many, it worked. But for James, something had gone terribly wrong. Tom couldn't help but blame himself. He had seen James' progress, but he had missed something. He had failed to save him. James' death reopened old wounds for Tom. He thought about Amy, his daughter, and how he had promised to help her through her battle with cancer. Despite all his efforts, he couldn't save her either. The pain of losing James felt the same. Tom questioned the therapy program, wondering if it was really making a difference. How could Bella help if there was no way to fix the deep pain these people carried? In the days that followed James' death, Tom found himself sinking deeper into grief. He spent long hours alone, thinking about the failure, about the people he couldn't save, and the loved ones he had lost. But it wasn't just his own grief that weighed on him. His ex-wife, Sarah, was feeling the loss too. They had both experienced the pain of losing Amy, but their grief had driven a wedge between them. The death of James brought that pain to the surface again, and it seemed like the last thing they had in common was their shared loss. The program quickly began to show results. Veterans who had struggled to sleep began to relax in Bella's presence. Those who had trouble expressing their emotions started to open up. Bella didn't try to fix anyone, she simply allowed them to be themselves. That was what made her so powerful. She didn't push them to talk or tell their stories. She just sat with them, letting them feel understood and accepted. Bella's role in the therapy program opened the door for a new form of healing. Tom and the staff began to see that animals, especially those who had experienced pain themselves, could offer a different kind of support. The bond that formed between Bella and the participants was something special, a quiet, unspoken connection that helped heal deep emotional wounds. Bella became not just a therapy animal, but a symbol of hope, showing everyone that even the most broken parts of us could find healing through time, trust, and unconditional love. Tragedy struck once again when James, one of Bella's most devoted therapy participants, took his own life. James had been struggling with severe PTSD, and his breakthrough moments with Bella had brought him some peace, but the weight of his past was too much for him to carry. His death hit everyone at the sanctuary hard, especially Tom. Tom had always known that helping trauma victims was a difficult journey, but he never expected to lose someone like James. The veterans and trauma victims who came to the sanctuary were vulnerable, carrying deep emotional wounds. They trusted Bella to help them heal, and for many, it worked. But for James, something had gone terribly wrong. Tom couldn't help but blame himself. He had seen James' progress, but he had missed something. He had failed to save him. James' death reopened old wounds for Tom. He thought about Amy, his daughter, and how he had promised to help her through her battle with cancer. Despite all his efforts, he couldn't save her either. The pain of losing James felt the same. Tom questioned the therapy program, wondering if it was really making a difference. How could Bella help if there was no way to fix the deep pain these people carried? In the days that followed James' death, Tom found himself sinking deeper into grief. He spent long hours alone, thinking about the failure, about the people he couldn't save, and the loved ones he had lost. But it wasn't just his own grief that weighed on him. His ex-wife, Sarah, was feeling the loss too. They had both experienced the pain of losing Amy, but their grief had driven a wedge between them. The death of James brought that pain to the surface again, and it seemed like the last thing they had in common was their shared loss. Bella became a local hero. Her story of survival and transformation resonated with many people, and she was recognized for her role in helping so many find peace. The media took notice, and soon there were stories written about the remarkable dog who had been chained for 7 years and had now become a healer. Tom was proud of what Bella had accomplished, but he knew it wasn't just Bella that made the program special. It was the team, and the connection they had with the people they were helping. Bella was the heart of it, but the people who worked alongside her were just as important. One of the most important changes came between Tom and Sarah. Through their shared work with Bella, they began to heal their own relationship. The pain of losing Amy and the years of distance between them had created a wall. They hadn't truly talked about their feelings or their grief in a long time, and it had made them grow apart. But working together at the sanctuary gave them a common purpose, something they could focus on outside of their personal pain. They started talking again, sharing stories about Amy, discussing their memories, and even laughing together. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of sadness and pain, but the healing process had begun. They learned to support each other, just as they had when they first started the sanctuary. Slowly, their bond began to grow stronger. Bella played a role in this healing too. As she worked with the trauma victims, veterans, and children, Tom and Sarah saw firsthand the power of forgiveness, compassion, and understanding. They saw how Bella's work helped people release their pain, and it reminded them that healing was possible, even for those who thought they couldn't move past their wounds. Over time, Tom and Sarah found a new sense of peace with each other. They didn't forget the past, but they learned to face it together. The shared work of running the sanctuary and watching Bella help so many others gave them the strength to rebuild what they had lost. By working together, they found a way to heal, and their relationship became stronger than it had been in years. Bella had not only changed the lives of the people she helped, but she had also brought Tom and Sarah back together, proving that healing could come in many unexpected ways. After 15 years of helping countless people, Bella passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her journey had been long, filled with challenges and healing, but in the end, she had transformed more lives than anyone could have imagined. From the scared, chained dog she once was to the symbol of hope she had become, Bella's story was one of resilience, love, and healing. Tom sat by Bella's side as she took her last breath, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything she had given. She had helped so many people overcome their pain, and in return, she had changed Tom's life as well. Bella had brought him back to a place of hope, where he could heal from the loss of his daughter and reconnect with his ex-wife, Sarah. The news of Bella's passing spread quickly, and people from all over came to the sanctuary to pay their respects. Tom and Sarah decided to hold a memorial service to honor Bella's life and the incredible impact she had on those she helped. The service was filled with people whose lives had been changed by Bella's calm presence. Veterans, trauma survivors, children, and families who had benefited from Bella's therapy program gathered to celebrate her. There were stories shared about how Bella had helped them through their darkest times, offering comfort and healing without saying a word. Her legacy was clear: she had been more than just a dog, she had been a healer, a companion, and a symbol of strength. As the service ended, Tom stood in front of the crowd and shared his thoughts. "Bella taught us all that healing isn't just about getting better on your own," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's about helping others heal too. Through her, we've learned that even the deepest wounds can be healed, and that love can transform pain." After Bella's passing, the sanctuary continued to thrive. Her story inspired Tom and the rest of the team to expand the programs they offered. They started new initiatives for trauma survivors, veterans, and children who needed help. Bella's legacy lived on in every new program, every new person who walked through the gates of the sanctuary seeking healing. The sanctuary's work with veterans continued to grow, with more and more people coming to meet Bella's spirit through the therapy sessions she had inspired. They also began offering support for children who had suffered from trauma, teaching them the same lessons Bella had taught so many others: that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that healing is possible, even when it feels impossible. Bella's story spread far and wide, inspiring other communities to adopt similar therapy programs for animals and humans alike. Tom and Sarah knew that Bella's work wasn't finished. Her spirit lived on, not just in the sanctuary but in the countless lives she had touched. The sanctuary became a place where Bella's story was told over and over, a reminder that even the most broken souls could heal. Though Bella was no longer physically with them, her impact was still felt in every corner of the sanctuary. The work continued, fueled by the lessons she had taught. Bella's legacy was one of love, healing, and hope, and her memory would live on forever. As Tom sat quietly in the sanctuary, he reflected on Bella's incredible journey. From being a chained captive to becoming a healer, her story reminded him that even the deepest wounds could heal. Bella had taught him that healing wasn't just about surviving the pain, it was about helping others find their way back to hope. Her legacy lived on in every person who walked through the sanctuary's gates, seeking peace and recovery. Bella's spirit continued to guide them all, showing that love and trust could overcome even the most painful pasts and help others heal.